Hi, I'm just sitting here with my girlfriend Mel, and we're just gonna discuss a little bit about her study habits and possible reasons why she's not obtaining the grades that she has in the previous semesters this semester. So, Mel, tell me a little bit about the study habits that you've adopted this semester.
Well, due to my limited time, I decided to go with using note cards, which I've never done before, and I also just skim through the text right before the exam.
Sure. So kind of what I hear you saying is this semester you're using a skimming method and a note card method to study for your exams. Is that right?
Right.
And so, how have you changed your study methods this semester as opposed to previous semesters?
Well, previously I did study guides, which I'd make in advance, usually a week in advance, and then from there I would look that over all week long, and then the day before the exam I would look over my lecture notes.
Sure. So, what I'm hearing is the difference is you have been making study guides and also studying them in advance in previous semesters that you haven't been doing this semester. Is that correct?
Right.
And so, tell me a little bit more about the study guides and how those are different from the information that you would put on the note cards.
Well, the study guides are going to be a lot more organized, I definitely found. Doing note cards, you tend to get them all messed up, and I feel like most of my classes everything feeds off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get the note cards messed up, you kind of get confused as to where the material is going.
Sure. So, what I hear you saying is that the study guides just help you be more organized than the note cards did.
Right.
And earlier you kind of mentioned that you would not only would you make the study guides, but you would use them to study in advance. Do you think that when you would make the note cards, would those be made in advance as well, or are those more of last minute?
They're not necessarily last minute, but I'm usually pretty tired throughout the week. So I find that note cards, I usually just write down the definition of a word and I don't actually really think about it. I'm just kind of writing. Versus the study guides, I was actually taking the time to go through the readings and actually understand what I was typing down because you almost had to make sense of it because it went in order.
Sure. So, I guess what you're sort of saying is that the study guides helped you organize concepts more,
Right.
whereas the flashcards were more just memorizing definitions.
Right.
Nice. So, earlier you said that you were tired. Is that something that is pretty usual for you in a semester, or how has that affected your studying this semester?
Well, I try to fit in a lot at one time. I've had definitely harder classes this semester, so it's definitely more time studying. So I have a lot later nights, and I also have a job early in the mornings, so that makes for a long day. And so, yeah.
Sure. So, really, it's the later nights and the early job.
Right.
And as far as the early job, is that also something that is new to this semester, or is this something that you've had for a while now?
I started in the middle of the summer this past year, so I've only had it for about 5 months, but it's been pretty exhausting. It's only 2.5 hours every day, Monday through Friday. But it's from 7 to 9:30, so I have to wake up pretty early and then going to bed super late at night. It makes for a really long week.
Sure. So would you say that it's the early hours or the amount of times per week that you have to work?
I would definitely say the amount of times I have to work throughout the week. If I just had to wake up maybe one or two times a week and work for, 6 hours versus 2.5, it would make a huge difference just because I'd have those other days to catch up on sleep.
Sure. So I guess what I hear you saying is it's the fact that you have to work so many times per week is what's more exhausting than actually waking up to go to the work.
Right.
And so maybe you touched on this a little bit before, but tell me more about the amount of work as far as like having a job that you've had in previous semesters.
What do you mean?
For instance, you have to work the 5 days a week
Mm-hmm.
this semester, and you've had a job in previous semesters. How frequent did you have to work that job?
In previous semesters?
Correct.
Well, I worked as a personal trainer, so it was a lot different. It was more based around my schedule, and if I had a super hard week, I could just basically tell my clients, like, I can't make it, or I'd ask if we could schedule a different time. So it was more based around my schedule
Mm-hmm.
versus this is more based around the kids at the daycare. They need their breakfast at a certain time, and I have to be there.
Sure. So I guess sort of what I hear you saying is that the fact that your job is a little more strict as far as the structure of when you have to be there is kind of having an effect on the times that you can choose to study
Right.
for your exams. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so as far as you mentioned waking up early, a lot of college students like to study late at night. How has your study patterns changed now that you have to wake up early as opposed to previous semesters?
Well, in previous semesters, I used to study in the mornings a lot of the times, and I now can't do that because I have class right after work every day.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if I have an exam, I have to be ready the night before, which somewhat results in a bad night of sleep just because I'm stressed out.
Sure.
What I'm used to in previous semesters is waking up every morning super early and studying for my exams then, just to be able to like refresh my memory and make sure that I know everything. And it just made me more confident for exams. I never go into exams as confident when I don't have a little extra time in the morning to look over everything.
Sure. Yeah, I guess so. Really, what I hear you saying is that in previous semesters, as opposed to this semester, you're used to waking up and getting those few hours in before the exam. And this semester, you're not able to do that. And so you think that that's negatively impacting how you're doing on the exams. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Sure. And as far as the amount of time studying, do you think that that has changed, or do you think that you're studying more this?
Keep going.
Do you think that you're studying more this semester or less this semester?
I think that I'm studying more this semester just because of the class load that I have. I just have a lot more assignments and exams to get done, but the quality of my studying has definitely gone down.
Sure. So what I hear you saying is that not only has the quality of your studying gone down, but your classes are getting harder. Is that correct? Right. And what is it about your classes getting harder that is affecting how you're doing? Is it the material that's getting harder, or is it more credits?
I just think it's a combination of I have a lot of projects due, which in previous semesters it was never like that. Usually classes go in the way that there's either a class that has a lot of projects and papers, and then there's another class that has a lot of just exams and whatnot. I have just a couple classes that are overloaded with like all three. So it's just
Sure.
a lot of work to one class, and then by the time I'm done with everything for that class, I'm not ready for an exam in another one. So
Sure. I guess what I hear you saying is this semester you have been doing a lot more projects than in previous semesters?
right.
Sure. And so what is unique about these projects that is setting you back as far as are the projects relevant to the coursework, or is it just the work that you have to do to put into the projects?
Are you saying is the material on the exams.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is, as far as the projects go, usually they would be on material that'll be covered on the exam. So do you think that the projects are a bad method of getting you to study for the exam? Or do you think that they're just completely irrelevant to what you're learning?
I think they're pretty irrelevant, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a different approach of learning the material, which I find the projects a lot more helpful than the exams. But a lot of the times they put the exams and the projects so close together that you can't really put in your full effort on a project when you have to study for an exam, which is usually has nothing to do with what you're doing in the project.
Sure. So sort of what I hear you saying is that you don't really mind doing the projects, but the fact that the projects aren't really on the material covered on the exam is sort of holding you back because you have so many of them so close to the exam.
Right.
Sure. And are there any behaviors that you've noticed this semester that you're doing that maybe you weren't doing last semester? For instance, are you going out more? Are you attending game days more?
I definitely say you living closer to me has made a huge impact just because it makes it more convenient to do dinner every night and to just hang out for a couple hours. It makes a huge difference in the amount of study time that I have.
Sure. So I guess kind of what I hear you saying is that maybe in the previous semesters you were more independent working, and now that sort of, you're in a relationship, you maybe feel more obligated to, split up your time in different ways than you previously have. Is that correct?
Right.
Sure. So I guess coming to a close in the interview, I just kind of wanted to summarize what you've been saying is that certain elements such as your job and waking up early, and definitely a change in your study habits. So from your note cards to previously what you were doing was making study guides. You think that the note cards maybe aren't as effective, and definitely maybe the way that you're allocating your time this semester, not as independent as you're used to. All of those factors sort of play a role in why you feel you might not be getting the grades that you want to.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I guess that's the end of the interview.